So welcome to Making Out in the Barn. I made a cat wheel. Somebody, Rick Smith, asked me how I did it. So let's go. I always like to start off with a drawing, or in this case a 3D model. So I do that in Fusion 360, which is sketch based. You draw a 2D sketch of what you want, then you extrude that to make it a solid body, which mimics the real thing you'll be making. So I started here, draw a couple of circles, and then extrude that to 1 inch thick, and that's my 2 layers of 1/2 inch plywood to make these rings. And you duplicate that, spread it apart, put slats in between them, draw all of that in another sketch with the slats, extrude them, and you end up with the ring. And then those parts can be cut on the CNC router. All of these parts will be cut that way. So the base is just a bunch of different size circles and tangent lines, and I just played around with it till I got something that looked good. This drawing that you're seeing is not the actual drawing. This is a recreation because I didn't record drawing that original design. So you see here another sketch that I used to lay out all the parts needed to build the whole thing. This took 2 sheets of plywood, and you can see where I put the grooves in to route slots to fit the slats in when it's assembled, make it really easy to put together. You don't have to try to struggle to line things up. It just fell right into place. You can see that the wheel is made in 3 sections. Each section's put together with screws and glue. Those slots routed in really make it easy to line the parts up, get them where they need to be. Now the 3 sections are complete, and they're held together by the second layer of plywood, and the joints are staggered and it's glued and stapled, and this will make the whole thing really strong. I put a strap around it to pull the joints together and make everything line up before I staple the pieces on there. There it is. Put an 1/8 inch round over on all the edges just to make it feel good. Makes it easier to paint too. That table's great for welding, but not so much for assembling. This thing wasn't all that heavy, but it was sure awkward. All the edges got rounded over on the base, just like a wheel. I don't have video of it, but I filled in all the edges of the plywood with automotive Bondo and then sanded, primed, did it again, sanded, primed. Then I used automotive spot putty on all the edges to fill in anything that remained so that finished coat of paint would really have something good to lay on. I'm using Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel in a satin black. It does a really super job, lays down nicely. Also using Rust-Oleum oil-based primer. It's a surfacer. Can't find that in Home Depot. I got it at AutoZone. So this stuff gets thinned with acetone up to about 10%, just enough so it'll spray good. Pro tip, go to Michael's and get a bunch of different sizes of craft sticks. They make great paint stirrers. Doesn't take a real fancy spray gun to do this. That one, that's an Eastwood, about $100, but you can use a Harbor Freight gun. They really do fine. The ones at Home Depot are fine too. Doesn't take a great big compressor either. It's easier with a gun like this to get a better finish than you can with a rattle can. Saves you a little bit of money on the paint too. Welcome to my spray booth. So this is a pretty simple setup. Those are paint drop cloths got from Harbor Freight, and I put some eyelets on them, hung them from hooks on the ceiling so I can take them down, put them up at a moment's notice. I built a frame with 3 box fans that's hinged on the door to suck all the overspray right out to the outside. Works pretty good. If you look real close, you can see the wires that are holding that wheel from the ceiling. To do the carpet, I covered all the painted areas and used a 3M spray adhesive. That's just a rug from Home Depot. The fun part was the decorations. I drew this up in Fusion 360, took it over into the Cricut machine and figured out how many squares would fit on a 12-inch piece of vinyl. Turns out it took 14 strips to go around the wheel, about 157 inches, so all of those pieces had to be lined up carefully. You can see I used tape to line them up and had to move them about twice, every single strip, to get everything to work out right. But it really paid off in the end, and it was very satisfying to peel this stuff off. Really happy with that. Now for the hardware. So this thing runs on 8 inline skate wheels. Each wheel has 2 bearings in it. So I had to come up with ways to hold those and not interfere with the bearings operation. So I also wanted to make those inner wheels adjustable so I could make it not have a lot of slop in it. Wanted everything to run smoothly. So the hardware was more complicated than it had to be. As Charlie Crippen says, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. He's right. So this is my favorite tool, the metal cutting circular saw. This thing will cut through up to like a 1/2 inch of steel like you wouldn't believe. I never knew such a thing was possible, but look at it go. Makes a nice cut, unbelievable. Now we go to the belt sander to clean it up, get all the sharp edges off. Doesn't take long. Then the Scotch-Brite wheel to clean and deburr, polish it a little bit. This is not a grinding wheel, this is a wheel made out of Scotch-Brite pads, and it really does a fantastic job. So now the layout for all the holes and the cuts in the part. So that's a blue layout compound, and I'll use a metal scribe to mark lines on it. I'm marking up crosshairs for each hole and using that automatic center punch to make a divot in it so I can locate the holes accurately. Now to the drill press. I'm using a center drill. It's a special bit that's short, rigid, and ground in such a way that it doesn't drift around, and you can hit that divot made from the automatic punch and really get an accurate location on your hole. Then come back with a regular drill bit and drill it to size. We're not going to drill all the way through. We just want to get a little bit of a countersink in there at each hole location. And it'll fall right in that little divot. Switch to a 1/4 inch bit, drill all 3 holes. Switch to a 3/8 and drill the 1 hole for that adjuster. This is a Noga deburring tool. Chucking it in a drill and it'll get rid of those burrs on each hole on both sides. Leaves a nice little countersink. Now I'll get set up to make the cut. You can barely see that line. Here comes that cordless steel saw again. Now I'm resetting the depth of the saw so it only cuts about halfway through the thickness of the metal, and you'll see the reason for this in just a minute. This is a really cool trick I learned from a guy in Australia. Line. It's cutting roughly halfway through the thickness. That's not critical. You can see how deep it cut there. So this goes in the vise. And you can easily bend it to a 90-degree or whatever angle you need. And that goes in the vise, and I'll weld up that divot. Not bad. With a flat disc, I'll grind that weld down, and then that metal just looks like it came that way. Now for the adjuster. There we go. 1.5 inch, 5/16. So the bolt and the washer and the bracket make a mark with a Sharpie, and that tells me where the groove needs to be for the C-clip, E-clip. Over to the lathe. So this little tool I ground just for this. You see how thin it is. It's just wide enough to make a groove that'll hold this E-clip. So I use that Sharpie mark to know where to grind to get right past where the washer is. Grind, it's cutting, it's not grinding. It may sound like it's grinding. Got a little bit of chatter on this. This is a reenactment. This, when I didn't film when I did the first go round of making the actual bolts. So a quick measure to see where we are. So that's a 3/8 bolt, and I got a 5/16 E-clip, so I need that groove to be 5/16. When I measured this, I was about 10 thousandths off, so we'll come back and cut it one more little bit. Really not all that critical. Come back and deburr with a little needle file. Don't want any sharp edges. There's the groove. And that clip snapped right in there. So the bolt, and the washer, and the E-clip, and we have an adjuster. So as that bolt spins in the right hand piece, it goes into the nut that's welded to the left hand piece and pulls that along that slot. So you adjust that wheel to where you need it. So there's the finished product, everything painted and installed. And that keeps the wheel from wobbling as it rotates. Now the wheel actually rides on these wheels. And there she goes. Took her a little bit. She threw herself off a few times. There you go. Successful cat wheel.